Hey there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be hailing from. This is Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents, and we are almost halfway through a mini series called Modernizing Red Hat Enterprise Linux Management. I'm Eric, the IT guy Hendricks, and joining me for this mini series is Mr. John Spinks himself. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. You may have seen in the chat, it's been an exciting last maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so as we've prepped. We had a monster of a thunderstorm roll through here. The sun's shining at the moment, so hopefully won't have any excitement. But if I just stop talking and everything goes dark, I'm probably waiting for the monitors to come back on and illuminate me again.
Oh, it was great. During sound check, all of a sudden his screen went dark and all you could see was the shadow of John. And it was like he was in witness protection or something. So you never know. Live streams, that's the fun of it. So we'll see what happens. But all that said, so John, why don't you give us a quick recap of the first 3 episodes, and then we'll talk about what we're going to dive into today.
Wow. So we kicked off this whole series with just what is Red Hat Insights kind of 101? What kind of information do we collect? So really just level setting, telling everybody the basics and sharing what they get with their existing Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription. We moved on to the second episode where we use some newer services that we have in there to build an image and then launch that image. And we're using that same image throughout the rest of the episodes. So after we build and launch, last week we patched. We took that brand new image, we applied some patches to it. We talked about patch templates and how you can take the content and only give access to certain content up to a specific date. And then today we're going to cover 3 different services that cover operationalizing your systems: the advisor, the drift, and the policies. So there is a lot of things to cover in this short episode.
We'll see how deep of a hole we dug ourselves trying to cover 3 services in one. But at least the first service is fairly well thought out. It's fairly well established. In fact, was the original Insights service, if you will.
That is the OG service that we have in Insights. Is the advisor service. Used to be, there was only one thing in Insights, and that was what we now know as advisor. So we're going to talk about that one first. But before we go, we had a demo fail last week. I went to patch my system and it failed. So as soon as the show ended, I think within like 5 minutes, I sent Eric a chat and went, I figured it out. It was my fault. I caused it. So in a later episode, couple weeks down the road, we're going to talk about the resource optimization service. But that's one that takes about a day to get initial data. And then you want, a little bit of historical data. So I went ahead and set that one up prior to last week's episode. One of the steps requires me to add localhost to the etc Ansible host file. So it tried to run the playbook against localhost and Insights when I don't know who localhost is, because none of y'all is local to me. So I went in and took that back out and everything ran fine. So I did patch that system last week, and that's going to come into play today. So that patch happened pretty much right after the episode ended, but it was
I hadn't even finished with the show notes, uploading all the links and stuff to the show notes before I got the IM. So the joys of live demos. We should have a mini series on how to give a live demo and survive.
Yeah, thunderstorms, demo fails, all of the above.
User error. It's all fun. It's all good.
So we're going to kick off. Go ahead and we'll pop the screen share up there. We've been playing with the resolution, so things may look a little bit more squunched. We found some oddities here, but hopefully it looks a little bit better. But it's going to cause me maybe a little navigational hurdles. So you'll see me maybe clicking more than we were. But I'm going to start out in our advisor service. I'm going to click the little 3 dots here. If your screen resolution changes or you're looking at it on a phone, actually I had somebody at Summit walk up to me with a phone, and they were doing Insight stuff on their phone. I was like, oh, that's cool. Can I take a photo of that? But yeah, if you roll in here, click these little 3 dots on the left hand, and that will open your menu if your resolution gets too small. But we can go into the advisor service directly, or I'm actually going to drive it from the inventory and go inventory systems. And then we used our mini series system, mini series 01. And I've got a group of information here. I'm just going to tap this advisor tab. And there's honestly not a whole lot to see right now because this is a brand new system, RHEL 8.8. we patched it to all of our installable patches last week. So it's not much to see. But if you think back to the launch episode, one of the things that we did is we installed PostgreSQL in the image. It's not actually running. So kind of a realistic thing that you might do is you might start up a workload, in our case, Postgres. And I want to go ahead and switch over to my terminal session. And let's do that right now. And I want to show you what this might look like.
This is a good chance while we're switching screens here. If you would, go ahead and give the episode a thumbs up and grab that share link and share it with a friend.
All right. So you should see that in there now. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to initialize this database here. So we're just going to go into Postgres itself and set up an initDB. So that happens pretty quickly. I'm going to go ahead and set up Postgres to start along with the system itself. And then the last thing we're going to do is run PostgreSQL. So there we are. And then after you do any kind of major action like that, and you would normally just wait till the next time Insights runs. But I'm going to manually kick off Insights collection, which is just the insights-client command. You can run that at any time. Default behavior of Insights, if you'll recall, is it runs once within a 24-hour period. That's a system process. But we just told it manually, go ahead and kick it off, do an inspection, and let us know what you find. Because we've made a change in the system. We've now kicked off a workload. So that will take a few more seconds. While that's happening, let's go ahead and.
So would it make sense if I were a sysadmin and I was building a machine, I was building out an image, and I want to get more frequent updates? Would it make sense on maybe a sysadmin's development system to adjust the cron timer?
I probably wouldn't do that unless you got a really good reason. I think from time to time, doing a manual kickoff like we did here might make sense. If you do any of the remediations job that's built into Insights itself, that will initiate for you at the end of the playbook a new run of Insights itself, just to say, hey, we changed some stuff, check again and see what's up.
Gotcha.
So I wouldn't go in and I did have somebody say, hey, can I run the Insights client every 5 minutes? And I'm like, you could, but why? Like, don't do it to yourself, because it doesn't add you anything. It creates a lot of churn on the system that's not really necessary, because chances are you're not changing frequently enough to really make a difference.
Makes sense. So what we're working with is an analytics tool and not so much a real-time monitoring. There's other things like Grafana dashboards that you can use inside of RHEL that would help give you that real live action.
Yeah,
that real-time monitoring of your system.
Yeah. So all we did here on that Insight system is we initialized and started our database, and we reran Insights. So we've got this workload running. If I come back and look now here inside the advisor service, now I have a new advisor recommendation, which is about my PostgreSQL database. And it's just saying that, hey, you have PostgreSQL running, but you haven't put in the TuneD best practices. So you need to go in and change this and follow your best practices a little bit. So this is beyond just RHEL. This is a little bit of workload level analysis that we're doing here. And if you'll notice on the advisor service, we tell you exactly to fix this issue, like step by step. Here's what you need to go through. So if you wanted to run all these commands, there they are, step by step. And it is tailored to this version of RHEL. So if you had a different version of RHEL with maybe the steps were slightly different, this is going to tell you this because you're looking at it at the system view. But to make life easy, much like we had with the patch service last week, we have an Ansible playbook. So you can tap the button next to it. If you have all of the appropriate permissions, which I do, the remediate button becomes available. You can tap this remediate button and you can actually walk through the process of creating a playbook, running that playbook, and clearing up your issue. So let's go ahead and do that real quick.
The great thing about using something like Advisor as you're building out your new image is you now have a playbook that you can use, or you can build those commands into, say, your image builder image. For instance, some of it was like vm.swappiness, things like that. You can actually adjust inside the image builder image. So if you've got a golden image, a standardized template that you want to run everywhere, then you can start to add layers to that cake and say, okay, now this offshoot of this image is going to be used for PostgreSQL databases, or you can add them to something like Ansible automation platform, so that when you spin up the system and say that this is going to be a PostgreSQL database server, then you've already got the playbook ready to go, and you can just have that run as part of your initialization.
That's it. And because we're doing the funky thing with the screen resolution, I thought I was sharing this playbook and I wasn't, so I got to stop share, reshare. So apologies for that, but we're trying to make sure the browser window is nice and clean for you when we show it. But this is the playbook that I just pulled down, and it's Postgres fix. As we mentioned last time, it's a signed playbook, so we try to prevent any kind of man in the middle type attacks. This is doing those exact same steps that we showed you inside the advisor recommendation. We've just created a playbook for you that can go through these steps. So all you really have to do is run this. So I'm going to close this back out and reshare my Insights tab.
Nothing like spending 25 minutes before a live stream just fiddling with resolution.
Screen resolution. All right. So what I did here is I clicked this execute playbook button, execute playbook on one system. It's going to take this playbook, send it to the system, and the system is going to execute it using Ansible remediation. So we're kicking off this playbook. We're running it. I can view from inside the tool here. Should be able to view this popping up and running. But it should be really simple to run. And I can't tell if I can't see it because of my screen resolution or what.
Go figure.
Yeah. But
so
we talked about
a quick question about
it requires additional permissions above and beyond what you're going to have as a base user. Like, you have to be given this ability to run a playbook. Not everybody gets this. I just really want to highlight that because it's a security concern that many people have.
So we did have a question about the playbook, and Conan wants to know, what does a signed playbook mean?
Yeah, so within the playbook itself, we have signatures that when we create the playbook, those signatures are inside it itself. If anybody manipulates the playbook in any way, the signature matching will fail and that playbook won't be able to be executed. So the point is trying to prevent people from injecting code in between Insights and the host itself, or trying to manually kick off a playbook run, somehow using elevated permission. So it's just a security concern that we put into place to be like, hey, let's make sure that anything that we're creating and generating is backed by a signature. So you can't put your own code in that could do something malicious.
So I can't deploy Bitcoin miners in people's...
Correct. That's the hope. All right. This thing should be kicked off by now. I don't know why it's not running, but in the interest of time, we'll come back and check this out in a few moments.
Sounds good.
And not put in your own signed playbooks. We're going to touch on that in just a minute. So let's see here. I'm going to go on and check the dashboard here of Insights as a whole, and just want to highlight, we have inside the dashboard, the main screen, there's these advisor recommendation section. We have what we called 5 incidents. Ideally, advisor things are proactive in nature. We're hopefully telling you about things before you hit them. So something like, I just initialized my Postgres database. You really want to enable TuneD because that's going to make you have a better experience. It's impacting us now, so this is probably going to be an incident because we want to address it. If I click on those 5 incidents, this is just the things I have in my environment that are affecting me now versus something that's more proactive in nature. And we also have at the top something we call pathways. The idea behind a pathway is there may be one thing, like a kernel upgrade, that actually fixes a number of smaller things. So in this case, update kernel boot option. If I view that pathway, this is 4 different things that will be fixed when we go and update the kernel boot options. So we're actually taking care of the number of things with one action.
This is something that I hadn't seen in use before. So this pathways makes it incredibly easy to batch some of your changes. So you can print these out. You can send them over to your incident management team or your whoever helps schedule outages and say, look, we can take an hour-long outage and fix these 16 things or whatever it is to then decrease those number of advisor, and you can batch them a lot easier with these pathways.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at, I've got 200 things in my environment. What should I do? No, I've actually got like 4 groups of 50 each.
Yeah, and a lot of this, and you heard me say this multiple times, like we're trying to help you focus in on what's going on your environment and where you need to focus first. So the idea of an incident is something that's actively affecting you now. If I clear out the incidents, there's only 4 things right now affecting me within Insight, so that's not a major deal. But I'm also going to clear this filter here, systems impacted 1 or more. Insights by default, especially the advisor service, it's only going to tell you about things that are actively impacting your systems, because otherwise you don't care about them. That's wacky. There must be a filter applied. Give me a second. Recommendations. I can't see all my filters at this resolution, so let me refresh. All right, there we go. So I'm going to close status enabled. I'm going to close system impacted 1 or more. That's more like it. There's almost 1,400 different recommendations that we have in this, within the advisor service. Because a common question that I get asked is like, hey, do you guys have any recommendations that check like SE Linux status? You just go in there, clear those filters, type in SE Linux, and yes, I have 22 different recommendations that affect SE Linux. They might not be affecting my systems right now, but these are things that we check for. So here's one, a bug in the SE Linux policy version. Like we could check and tell you about this. This is something that could potentially cause a major support issue, and we can just find it super quick with the advisor service. All right. There's also within the advisor service an executive report. So if I download that, it's going to create a PDF file. And that PDF file, I will share that one real quick. Share window. Here we are. So this is just a super quick executive report that we have up, which is summarizing our recommendations by severity, by category, and the top 3 recommendations that we need to address within our environment. So this is just, click of a button, PDF report, what's going on. There it is. Take a look and see what it is.
So much prettier than the rapidly thrown together Excel documents that I used to put together for my executive teams.
Or even the CSVs or JSONs that we've got,
right.
Environment. Switch back here to my Insights tab. There's 2 other quick areas that I want to hit up. We do have a systems view. So if you're like, hey, I just spun up this new mini series of one thing, what's going on with it, or I need to know if there's any. There you go. So I had to make it a little smaller. So hopefully that didn't kill the resolution, but it was messing my tabling up real bad. Like mini series 01, you can come out here and be, okay, I got 2 things on it, and I can export those out to CSV or JSONs. And there's my report of what's going on in this particular host. The other one is the topics view. So I mentioned workloads like PostgreSQL, but we also have a number of workloads inside of the advisor service for like AWS, Oracle RAC. There's PostgreSQL, there's Red Hat Satellite. So if you're like, hey, I'm running SAP HANA in my environment and I need to know what you got for me, you can come out here and take a look and say, here's SAP. I don't have anything actively affecting my environment right now, but again, clear that systems impacted 1 or more. And we've got 44 different SAP recommendations that you can leverage. So you can go out and say, yeah, this is actually checking, am I using more than 255 vCPUs? If I am, I may have some system performance issues. That may be something that takes you a long time to find out on your own. Mm-hmm. I think one of the oldest stories that we have about the advisor service and Insights as a whole is we had a customer that was using a combination of RHEL, Oracle RAC, and I think HP Blade Logic. And they had tickets open with everybody, and nobody could figure out what was going on with this performance problem. And around that time, they just decided to try out the advisor service, and they hit up one of their Oracle RAC systems and, kind of like going into systems and, hey, let's go look at this host. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff happening in it. let's look at it. And they had this list of like 10 different things. They're like, maybe we should fix these. Went through the process, and these 10 things randomly were causing the performance issue on the Oracle RAC database. But 3 different major company tech supports couldn't figure it out because the issues were so like, just they seemed unrelated and really didn't make a whole lot of sense. But Insights managed to up level a lot of things that were a lot of support work.
So I know we've got good partnerships with Oracle as well as Microsoft in terms of like SQL Server and Azure, as well as with SAP. But we had a question come in whether or not, say, an end user organization could actually develop their own checks and recommendations to put into Insights.
Yeah, that's another pretty common question. So the short answer, you cannot create your own recommendations. You can talk to your Red Hat representative, especially if you have a TAM or an SA that you work with a lot, and they can recommend one. They can put a request for enhancement in. But another thing that you can do actually moves right into our next service that we want to talk about, which is the policy service. So the goal of a policy service is to help you self-identify some sort of an internal policy that matters to you. So I'm going to go here into policies, and let's see an example of what this might look like. I have one already existing that is Java installed. So it uses conditional language in here, and my description, Java is not permitted on a certain class of host. So the policy simply just tells me, is the package Java installed? If it is, it sends me a notification, because then I know I got to go take care of this. It's really all there is to it, and it uses the facts on the system. So in a lot of conditions, this can help. So if I click a little bit deeper into it, I can actually see the trigger history. And here are systems that have tripped this particular one. So I've got a number of them listed in here. Java's installed on my satellite host. It's installed on several of my AWS hosts people are playing about. But every time Insights checks, it checks for this condition, and it will send me a notification. And those notifications we haven't talked in a lot of detail, but that could be sending me an email. It could be sending information to Splunk or ServiceNow or to Slack or to Teams or to Google Chat. Like, we'll get into that in another one, but just know that there's a lot of options to get notified. All we do is notify you that this exists. So, and I'm going to go back to the policy service itself, and let's actually build one real quick. So I'm going to create a policy. You can copy an existing policy, or you can create one from scratch. So we're going to do from scratch, and we're going to do a owner tags owner. And there is examples here. So we're going to cheat a little bit in the interest of time, and I'm going to go into the what conditions can I define. And I'm actually going to grab right here which of my public cloud instances are missing a tag owner value set. So I'm literally going to copy that. Notice that the drop downs are here. So if I were to type it in, I could do something like facts.number, and it's going to change. But again, interest of time, I'm going to paste that. I don't use Alibaba, so I'm going to kick Alibaba out of here. I just don't have access to it in my world. But I do have access to AWS, Azure, and Google. And it's really important to me that the owner tags are set, because I want to know who owns systems in my environment, so I can go out and, if they're misbehaving, I can track them down and say, hey, your use is a little out of control, and I need you to, lower your instance size or whatever we need to do. So
you're missing a
validate your condition. Yeah, that was
right there,
100% on purpose, just so you could see that would fail. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. And that's awesome that we've got that validate feature in there.
So we'll validate the condition in here. Just tells us that we've got the proper syntax in place. We click next. Again, notifications, we only have a single trigger action right now, because the rest kicks you out into the notification settings. And then we review this. I'm going to turn it on and click finish. So at this point, I have a copy of this. The next time you run Insights, it will check for it. And what this would look like is, this is the exact same one I just created a couple days earlier. So you could see this is what it would look like for any system where somebody's created it and not tagged an owner. It will show up here. My mini series system does not show up in here because it's got an owner's tag. So it's perfectly fine. It's part of my template I built.
Well, and I believe episode 9 or so, we'll be talking about some different applications that can integrate with Insights.
Absolutely.
So, like Slack is one of them, and this would be a perfect place to have alerts like that show up.
Yeah, and if I don't know if I can do it with my current screen resolution, but if it works out, I may be able to show you a Slack notification here in a couple moments. But that's the policy service. It seems super simple, but that's really powerful. One of the things that helps me with this is within the documentation, it will tell you all the different values that you can leverage. It was actually I neglected to point it out, but if we been into the documentations on what can I combine, there's a link to review available system facts, and this is in the docs. It'll point you to the right appendix inside the policy docs, where it will say, hey, here's all the different facts that you can use. All right, I want to move on real quick to the drift service. So the idea of drift is it uses these same facts that we just talked about to compare systems to each other or to a baseline. So we're going to start with a baseline, and I'm going to create a baseline, and I can create that completely from scratch. So I can take all of those facts that I just looked at and manually put them in there. So that's super useful if I really only want to compare one or two things. Maybe I'm like, hey, I want the system to be RHEL 8.8. I want it to run on x86, and I want it to have a minimum of 8 CPUs. Like, you can put that in there and run against that baseline, or you can do something more detailed. I'm going to pull a baseline from an existing system. Mini series baseline. I'm going to select my mini series system here and click create baseline. I love it. Live demos. There it is. It just had a loading thing. Now, the thing is, I created this baseline from a system, so it copied all the facts exactly as they are. All the facts exactly as they are, which means there are things in here like last boot date, perhaps. There it is, last boot time. And the network interfaces. I'm letting it collect my IP addresses. You don't have to. Reminder, you can turn off any of this information that you want to. Let's see, what else am I collecting? So I may be collecting some information like this. There's a MAC address, there's a UUID, like all this stuff in here.
FQDN up towards the top.
FQDN, you saw it up towards the top. Yeah. So there's different things in here that are I don't want every system to have the FQDM dir-mini series 01. That'd be silly. So I can select these in here, delete the selected facts. And now I've taken an existing system. I've said, I want my systems to look like this.
Now, to kind of tie the two together, was the system we selected, is that the one we've been working with, or is that the original?
It is the one we've been working with. I should have selected the old one, but that's all right. I'll show you here in a moment what that happened. So it's the same one we've been working with. I am going to go real quick into the comparison now that I've created a baseline. And we're going to compare that baseline, mini-series baseline. And then I have two mini-series systems. If you recall back to the launch episode, I created two at the same time. I've been working the whole time off of mini-series 01. I just created my baseline off of mini-series 01. So I can click the submit button. But I also want to highlight before I do this that I have the option of historical profiles as well. I can go back as many as 7 days, and I can do a comparison against a historical version of that system. So when I hit submit here, what I should see is I actually have, and it's going to be hard to see because of the scrolling, I've got my baseline, I've got my mini series 01, and then I have a historical version of that mini series 01. I actually changed the host name recently. So I did that earlier today so I could see the system on the terminal a little bit better. So back then, let's see if I can, I'm going to scroll a little bit. The baseline is what we expect things to look like. So you'll never see anything highlighted in the baseline, but you see a red line here between mini series 01 and 02 because we have a difference. I'm going to close that baseline out just because we have a smaller screen resolution here. And now we're down to mini series 01 and historical mini series 01. When I first kicked it off, when I first made it, only had a single vCPU. I think I had it as a small or a mini, and then I upped it to I think I did a 2XL. So I've increased the number of cores per socket. I've increased the number of CPUs. I've increased the system memory. So you can see these differences over time. And this is super helpful for the whole. It worked perfectly well on Friday when I went home, and I came in Monday morning and nothing works. What happened? So we've got all this data here. And just like everything else in Insights that we've seen, you can export that out to CSV or JSON. So we can say, here's what changed. Why did this change? Well, it changed because I changed the instance size. I know that. I don't know if everybody else knows that. And yeah, so just solve the question. You can save these out, CSV or JSON. It's this little export button right here next to comparison. So makes it super easy. You can also, it's lesser known. You can also like bookmark this in the URL, and it will bring you back to this comparison every time.
Oh, awesome. Although you may have a feature request in Shantanu's follow-up question, which was, do you have the ability to basically import a save CSV?
At this time, no. I don't know of any ability to do that. That'd be one where we'd probably be interested to know more about the use case and if that one would make sense. So if you've got a TAM or a Red Hat SA, or reach out to us directly. There's a feedback button. If you see the purple feedback button right here, I'm trying to highlight it with my mouse, lower right-hand side. If you ever tap that feedback button, you have the option to share feedback, and that actually creates a trackable artifact. For us, it's a Jira ticket in the back end, and the PMs do go in and they scrub those Jira tickets. So our product managers are actively looking at this feedback. Same thing if you're seeing a bug, if you're seeing documentation issues, you can report it right here, real time. We'll know where you are within the UI when you report this, and it gives us a lot more information. If you don't see that feedback button, you probably have a very aggressive ad blocker turned on because we use Pendo is the name of the tool on the back end that runs this. So if you have Pendo block, and it is blocked by default in a lot of the big ad blockers, you may not see this feedback button, and that's why.
Awesome.
So yeah, this is a quick look at the drift service itself. I think it's super helpful. Again, especially for that case that something was working and now it's not working. You can export that out. You can do a comparison. It will show you package changes. So you ran a patch, you updated a package version, and it broke something else without you knowing about it. Oh, well, yeah, on Friday it was version X of the package, and now on Monday it's version Y. So somebody messed something up. Let's go, revert it back and figure out what's happening. But we just blasted through all three of our operational services in like 30 minutes. So I know that was an absolute ton. And there was a bunch of questions coming in too. So hopefully we managed to handle a bunch of them.
We do have a couple of quick questions if you have a minute, John.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So first question is how to implement this on-premise. Does every service need to be connected to the Red Hat Hybrid Cloud Console? Or can you have a proxy, or will it work in something like AirGap?
We talked a little bit about this in the first episode. So this is an online capability. So Insights and the Hybrid Cloud Console does require a connection to the internet somewhere. That does not have to be a direct connection, but it does require a connection. So completely on-premise is not an option. If you are a satellite user, a default behavior of Red Hat Satellite is if you have host A connected to the satellite, host A will proxy its data through that satellite by default. So if satellite's your trusted point of contact to the internet, that's a default behavior of a satellite connected system. You don't have to configure it. You don't have to set it up. It just works. Trademark. You don't get that very often. You can set up a web proxy as well if you're not a satellite user, but you do have a trusted front-end web proxy somewhere. Everything happens over port 443, so you don't have to go in and open like 30 different ports in the firewall. But yeah, you do need a connection to the internet for this to work.
Then the other question was at the top of the episode. Richard was asking, with the ELS of June 30th, with RHEL 7 going ELS, or it should be EOM, end of maintenance after June 30th, 2024. Can Insights help with that?
I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to hold further comment.
So
Richard, next time we talk, ask me that question, and I'll answer more. So we're working on some stuff that I don't think it's anything that I can talk about at this particular moment.
So right now, Insights is really geared more towards 8 and 9, especially with RHEL 7 coming towards the end of maintenance. It, of course, does have 2 or 4 years of ELS that you can get as an add-on, though Red Hat Insights doesn't require any add-on whatsoever. If you have Red Hat Enterprise Linux, even if it's just the developer for individuals subscription, you have access to Insights. In fact, I've got a number of systems here in my home lab that are all connected to Insights. Although don't tell John, but it's been a while since I've gone through and run some of the remediation playbooks. So there's some things I need to get done.
And to be very clear, like Insights works perfectly well on all RHEL 7 systems. Like you have to, it's an extra step. You have to install the Insights client, but it's a fully supported, like if the version of RHEL is supported, Insights is supported on it. Some of the things that we're talking about in this mini series, you may not be able to use, like that direct remediation feature. That you can't use with 7. You have to be connected to a satellite to do remediation. So you can still do it. It's just not a from Insights direct to host type thing. Another one, like next week, we're going to talk a little bit about some security services. We're going to hit on vulnerabilities and malware. Malware is one that doesn't work on RHEL 7 today because it leverages the Yara package, and the Yara package is an EPEL package in RHEL 7, I believe. So it's not something that is in our supported bag of tricks, as it were. So will it work? It might work. Is it supported? No, because it's in a non-supported repo.
Awesome. And with that, we are a bit over time, but John just hinted at our episode next week. Join us every Tuesday. We've got 6 more episodes to go. And so far, we're on schedule, and we haven't had any major outages, so we're in good shape. Bear with us right. Bear with us as we go through 6 more episodes. We're live every Tuesday afternoon. You can actually join me here in just a little bit over on the Fedora YouTube channel. I'm going to hang out with Major Hayden and some of the folks in the Fedora community. We're going to be talking about the Fedora Cloud Linux spin. So really looking forward to that. I want to go grab a bite to eat before I check my email. and then join us. Actually, no Into the Terminal this week. Friday is a Red Hat holiday. It's a recharge day where everyone is told to log out. Don't check email. Don't check instant messages. So we'll all be off. And then next
Nobody
Wednesday,
told me.
Oh, I just did. I
gotta go check my calendar now.
And then next week, we've got a special episode of RHEL Presents next Wednesday. We're actually going to bring our guest back, Mr. Randy Russell, to talk about the value of Linux. We're going to talk about why Red Hat Enterprise Linux it exists, why Linux and open source are important. So it's I don't want to say back to basics, but it's a remembering why we do what we do type episode. I'm really looking forward to it. Brian and Randy and I got talking after last week's episode and really thought it'd be a good time to just sit back and talk about why we do what we do. So if you love Linux and open source, catch us for RHEL Presents next Wednesday. Otherwise, subscribe to our channel because we have stuff going on all the time, obviously. And with that said, I think that's about everything. So join us next Tuesday. That's the next time we'll be live on this channel. So until then, on behalf of John Spinks, my co-host, myself, Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, and all of Red Hat, thank you all for joining us live, and we'll talk to you soon.